हाँ, ये तो फिर ऐसे ही हो जाता है, ठीक नहीं लगता ऐसे. अपनी साइड से बढ़ा दो इसको. I would love to know your thoughts on the New Age movement. Is it toxic? No, of course, the New Age movement is not toxic. It's also, you can't really put an umbrella around a movement and say what counts as New Age. If you ask 15 different people who themselves identify as part of the New Age movement, what is it? They'll tell you 15 different things. Somebody will talk about crystals. Somebody will talk about the power of attraction, the law of attraction. Somebody else will talk about our ancestors and the power in nature. Somebody else will talk about enlightened abundance and attracting financial abundance. I mean, there's so many different ways that people who identify as New Age, how they even think about that movement. It's definitely not toxic. Bringing traditional, ancient, timeless teachings into a modern concept for modern people is actually beautiful. It's wonderful. When we speak about the Hindu tradition, what it's really called is Sanatan Dharma, meaning eternal way of life. And so perhaps for some people today, the way that it was taught at that time doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily something that they can understand or that they connect with, but the teachings are timeless, Sanatan. And so being able to take those teachings and put them into a new vocabulary, you can say. The values are the same. The teachings are the same. The truths are the same. But giving them a new vocabulary or a new way of understanding them is beautiful. However, the dilemma arises, and this arises much more in the West than it arises in India, in the Western New Age movement. The dilemma is what they tend to do too frequently is they pull a tiny piece out of an ancient tradition, frequently the Hindu tradition, the Buddhist tradition, the tradition of indigenous peoples. They pull a tiny piece out of it, absolutely out of context, and then they use it to justify exactly how they want to live. So for example, the number of people I have heard refer to their unbridled promiscuity, you could say, their lack of brahmacharya. When we speak in yoga about the yam and niyam, and we speak about brahmacharya, it's not only sannyas, it's not only actual vows of celibacy. It means integrity in our relationships, integrity in our engagement in sensual pleasures. So if we are married in a marriage with integrity, with loyalty, with honesty, fine. That's considered integrity. It's considered brahmacharya, according to yam and niyam. It doesn't mean thou shalt be celibate. It means thou shalt have integrity in these relationships. But I mention it here because I can't tell you the number of people I have heard in the West speak to me about their really unbridled promiscuity, absolute lack of integrity, lack of brahmacharya, as tantra. That they are engaged in tantra. What they've done is they have pulled an ancient, powerful system that enables us to experience and connect with the divine through ways that are related to our physical body. A whole science of yoga that has nothing to do with promiscuity, nothing to do with unbridled desire and impulse. But they pull a word out of a teaching and they use that word to justify living the way they want to live, which is promiscuously. Now, I'm not the moral police or the spiritual police. No problem. Live however you want to live. But the dilemma becomes when they justify that way of life with this spiritual stamp. Because now it's not promiscuity. Now it's tantra, which means it's spiritual. We see it a lot with regard to the idea of our minds creating our reality. So in our tradition, there's an incredible wealth of scriptural knowledge about how our mind creates our world. And sometimes it's very direct. Jo hum sochte hain is what we do. What we think is how we act. How we act is our karma. That karma has karmic fruit. So naturally from our thought to this action, the action leads to character. Character leads to our destiny. From a thought. Exoch. But it also happens not only because that thought leads to an action, it also happens because thoughts themselves are very powerful. And this is a system around meditation, around mantra, around prayer, around kriya, around ways of using our mind, our bodies, our breath, to actually transform our life, our inner world. And because we are energetic beings, it ends up transforming our outer world. But it's a very deep system of first controlling the mind, in which we become free of the desires, we become free of the ignorance, we become free of the illusion, we become free of the false identification. But sadly, in the New Age movement, a lot we're seeing teachings come up around, if you can think it, it will appear. And there's God knows how many programs that you could go online right now and pay a whole bunch of money to take that would teach you how to close your eyes and meditate on money with the promise that basically when you open your eyes, there's going to be a mound of money in front of you. Or maybe you just have to open the door to your house, but that basically the money's going to be waiting for you. And what it has done is it has skipped the entire depth of the teaching, which is when I go inside, deep inside, I realize I already have everything I need. because I am full. I am whole. Right? When we chant Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. It's this beautiful teaching that reminds us we are full because we have been created by fullness, infinity. We've been created out of fullness, infinity. And so the deeper I go within on my spiritual path, the more I am aware I'm already full. This is what I was speaking about in Arti today. I just, this afternoon, spent a beautiful half an hour or so with about 200 village women who, for many of them, it was their first time leaving their village to come here. Many of them had never even been on a train, let alone a car or an airplane. And they were, matlab we had to end because it was Arti, but mere ko itni maza aa raha tha कि I was like, just, hum ye karte rahe. Just to be with them, that joy in their life. They have nothing from the material perspective, but they have everything in their own experience. If you say to them, aap gareeb hai, they will say, nahi, bilkul bhi nahi, we are not poor. Kahan gareeb? And this is what I experienced when I first came to India. And this is the huge piece that the New Age movement has left out. They've taken a tiny bit from the beginning, which is close your eyes, go within, connect to source within. Then they've skipped everything else and they've landed at, and you will have everything you want. What they have skipped over is that you will realize that you already have everything you need. You will find the source of joy inside of you. You will find the source of peace inside of you. They've left all of that out and they've turned it into, pay me money and I will teach you how to meditate, to get that which, if you were meditating properly, you would be much less attached to, much less focused on. And that prosperity, you would realize, is already there. So there are some pitfalls in the New Age movement, because in general it tends to be a movement of those in the West who have kind of a sprinkling of ideas, of teachings and traditions from the East. And again, that's beautiful. I mean, Sanatan Dharma always says we are for everyone. Everyone can benefit. It is accessible to everyone. No borders, no boundaries. But it's not about the sprinkling of it. It's not about, oh, there is a book and it is called the Kama Sutra. Therefore, I'm going to live this promiscuous life and call it spirituality, without having any idea of what a sutra is, why the sutras were given to us, the idea that every aspect of life is supposed to be about connecting to God. And so we do tend to fall into this oversimplification and commercialization in the New Age movement. So the movement itself is not toxic by any means. I'm very, very glad that it exists. I think it would be nice if there just were a little bit more commitment to the depth of the teachings and the roots of the teachings, rather than just plucking individual flowers and making just a basket of flowers out of that. It's beautiful as long as you're taking it just on the superficial level. But if you go deep, the depth isn't there. And the depth is there in the original teachings. Are there any questions anyone here has? Yes.
Pranam Sadhviji. I have a question regarding how can we increase our attention. Okay, because in 2-3 times I think you have mentioned that our attention snap has like really gone down. Whenever somebody comes, so people look at them.
We get distracted.
Yes, yes. So distraction is so much. So I have found that mobile phone is like one of the things which has decreased our attention.
Absolutely.
Okay, and news channels and maybe social media. Okay, and but I want to know that what kind of food or yoga or meditation or friends, like
How can we fix it?
how can we fix it?
Great.
What kind of like great advice you can maybe
Sure.
give? Okay?
Sure, beautiful.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, we've been speaking a lot about attention here over the last several days. The ways to increase it are to realize that the way our brain functions is a habit, okay? Neurologically, whatever we do, our brain gets habituated to do it like that. है ना? हम कहते हैं संस्कार. Neurologically, we say a neural network or a neural pattern. But what it means is basically what I am doing is training my brain. Now my brain will do more of that. So if every time I feel a little upset, I punch a wall, what that's doing is it's actually laying a habit in my brain that every time I'm going to get angry, it's going to lead me into punching a wall. It lays a sanskar in me that this is how I deal with anger. And it actually gets harder and harder and harder to control it. People think if I just let it out, I will be better, but it's the opposite. The more you give in to anger and hit things, punch things, scream, have temper tantrums, the more your brain is being molded into that's how we do it. Now the same thing is true with our attention. If I spend my life constantly moving from one thing to another, there was recent research that said the average office worker these days, the average person in any office, spends, well, guess how long? Guess how long the average worker spends of uninterrupted time on any task they are doing during the day. How long? 3 minutes. You've read this research. You guessed. 3 minutes. आप सोचो, how many hours we spend at the office? 8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours. How much we have to do. And yet, how much time without being interrupted are we actually spending? They did another piece of research that showed that people who are constantly interrupted in what they do over the course of an hour, at the end of that hour, their IQ has dropped 10 points. 10 points. Now they compared it to people who take drugs, people who smoke marijuana. If you smoke marijuana, your IQ points drop 5 points after you smoke. Meaning, getting constantly interrupted actually makes you even stupider than taking drugs. We've set up our life and our work in such a way that we can't pay attention, so our work is not happening. It takes us longer to do things. We're getting stupider every hour. And so we're frustrated. So when we're frustrated, what do? Right? And it's just we're creating a worst case scenario. Now, the way out. Number 1. In your day, do whatever you can to make sure that when you are working on something, whether it's at work, whether it's your yoga, I would hope when it's your meditation your phones are off, but also when it's your yoga, when you're reading something, whether you're reading it online, whether you're reading it in a book, when you're watching, let's say you're watching an inspirational video, some satsang, some katha. Whenever you are doing something deliberately, make sure you're not being interrupted. Put your phone away. I always tell people, turn off your notifications. You can pick it up, check if you've gotten a message, but there is absolutely no reason for our device to be binging every time somebody sends us a message. It literally turns us into slaves. We wake up every day to be proactive. Here's what I'm going to do today. And the moment I'm out of bed, suddenly I become a slave to not only every person sending me a message, but every social media algorithm that decides I haven't checked my Instagram or Facebook feed recently enough. Now it's going to start binging. You've got a like, you've got a comment, somebody posted something. We've become slaves. So number 1, turn off all your notifications, other than just when the phone rings. And then you've got this beautiful thing called Do Not Disturb. Now what Do Not Disturb does is it enables you to choose. People who are very important that kuch bhi ho jaye, their call should come through. Your family. Your boss, if it's the middle of the workday. Whoever it may be. You create a system in Do Not Disturb where only those people's calls ring. So let's say you are reading, or you're doing yoga, or you're watching satsang, or you're listening to katha, or you're working on something that you're putting your mind to. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Kuch jaruri baat hai, their calls will come. Anybody else, when you're done, you'll see their missed call, you'll call them back. But we really have to reclaim our power over our time. Because what happens is our brains lose the ability to concentrate. We have an epidemic these days. Just say aap baat karte hain, nobody can concentrate anymore. It's this massive problem everybody is suffering from. Man nahi lagta hai. Main kaam karne ki koshish karta hu, man nahi lagta. Concentration power is gone. People are not able to read books anymore. Koi bhi video aap dalna chahenge, if you can't make it 3 minutes or less, nobody will watch. I mean, this is the rule these days. We have destroyed our own brain's ability to concentrate. And the tragedy is everything in life that's meaningful requires time and attention. Whether we are working on something, creating something, having a conversation with someone, learning something, doing our spiritual practice. But we have literally shot ourselves in the foot if we do not ensure that we are not interrupted. So there's all kinds of ways. But you've got to do it. And you talk about friends. Well, have friends who, when they talk to you, are not on their phone. Have friends where you can have a rule that when you go out for dinner or chai or to have satsang together, that nobody's looking at their phones. There's a great thing that a lot of people I know do. When they go out to dinner together, everybody sticks their phone in the center of the table, upside down, in a pile. And the first person to pick up their phone has to pay for dinner for everybody. There are devices now. I mean, it's tragic that we actually have to have a new device to protect us from our other devices. But there are devices now, I forget what they're called, but where people are using them at parties, at events, at spiritual programs, where you go in and you actually have to stick your phone in it. You can keep your phone. It's not like a big box that they collect phones. It's not like going to Rashtrapati Bhavan or something. But they give them out. You stick your phone in it. You keep your phone, but it locks your phone. You cannot turn your phone on unless you go. There's some way that they unlock it when you leave. I'm sure if there were an emergency, they would unlock it before that for you. But the point is, you can't unlock it. You've got to go and get them to unlock your phone. Because people are realizing we have lost the ability to connect with each other, to even look in each other's eyes and have a conversation. We've lost that ability, but we can reclaim it because our brain keeps changing. So have friends who are also looking to reclaim their lives. Go places where people are not on their phone all the time. You'll find that actually your ability to enjoy your life and to be successful in achieving what you want to achieve in the big picture and every moment is so much more. Otherwise, as I always say, we're like those balls in the pinball machines. Somebody pulls it back and the ball just goes like this through the machine until the 25 cents runs out. But that's not what we're here for. So we have to really reclaim our minds, our brains, our time, and our attention. And you can do it. You just have to make a commitment to do it, because it's not easy. We live in a world of distraction. But we need to make, I think, like mutual commitments and support each other in a community. Because we're not going to rewind the clock. They're not going to stop sending you notifications. There's too much money in it. Beautiful. Sure. We have time for one more question, if anyone else has a question. Yes.
I would like to know when you feel like anguish, or when it's something squeezed here but you don't know the reason, and then you cry and you become sad and you don't even realize why you're sad or why those things happen.
So this experience of anguish, of just kind of suddenly we are overcome with sadness, it happens for a lot of reasons. Sometimes because we are simply energetic beings. You could pass by someone who was sad, and we feel it. Our hearts are open. Some of our hearts are more open than others. Some of us are more, we call it sensitive, right? Some people we say, oh, you're too sensitive. Well, sensitive means I'm energetically open to what's happening around me. Someone around me is suffering. I'm going to feel that. And that's actually beautiful. It's actually a spiritual moment. It's what leads our saints to spend their lives in service. Otherwise, why bother? Right? They don't need the money. They don't have, children they've got to get married off, houses with mortgages. Why would our enlightened masters be the ones who spend their lives in service? Because their hearts melt and break when other people are suffering. So sometimes one of the reasons we feel that is literally just we are in the presence, or we were in the presence of someone who was really suffering. And we just feel it. Sometimes it happens because we have things that we haven't looked at. We've got inner emotions, inner situations that we haven't fully looked at. In either case, let it be. If there are tears, let there be tears. Emotions aren't bad. Emotions are windows. They're windows into seeing ourselves. So if you find that the anguish has a face, a shape, sometimes they do. Sometimes a picture arises in our mind with the anguish. Well, that will give you a clue into what you are feeling anguish about. Maybe a loved one is sick, and suddenly there's anguish and the image of the loved one. And that's the anguish. Maybe that image of the loved one who's sick makes us face to face with our own mortality, with the temporary nature of everything on earth, and suddenly that's anguish. Oh my God, I'm also going to get sick and die? Well, if that's what's going to happen, I mean, this is the life of the Buddha, right? That's what sent him out of the palace and into the woods. Oh my God, I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get old, I'm going to die? That anguish sent him out to find that truth. So sometimes it'll have a shape, an image. Sometimes it won't. Just allow it to be there. It's a wave. Don't get wrapped up in the drama. Oh, poor me. Oh, we're all going to die. Oh, there's never enough time. Oh my God. Don't get wrapped up in the drama. Do what you can, as much as you can, to help others. And commit your life into being anchored in that which matters. Being of service, being surrendered. Connecting to the divine. And when the emotions arise, whether it's anguish or anger or jealousy or fear, whatever it may be, things just arise. Sometimes with an idea what they are, sometimes without it. It's okay. Allow it to be there. Say namaste. But I don't have that much time today. Nice to see you. Yeah, I got a moment. I'll hold you close for a moment here. And then you just let that wave go. Let it go. If you don't get stuck in the drama of it, it will dissipate. Because it's all just this fluctuation in the mind, right? We talk about the fluctuations of the mind stuff. That's all it is. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your evening, everyone. A beautiful day to our family joining us from online, all over the world. And so much love to all of you.